Every farm has a story. When it comes to dairy farming, these stories are often only heard by the animals raised, the land stewarded, and the family that makes it all possible. Join me, Dairy Gal Val, as I interview individuals from across the dairy industry, both within the United States and across the globe, discussing topics like farm management, the food industry, ag business and technology, and most importantly, their farm story. This is the Dairy Hour Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Dairy Hour Podcast. I am your host, Val Levine, or Dairy Gal Val, whichever you want to call me. And I'm joined today with a special guest, Mr. Alex Peterson. Alex, how are you?
Good to be with you, Val.
Good. I'm happy that we get to have this fun little chat. And Alex has already assured me that I better make sure that it's not boring and I better spice it up or tell him it needs to be spiced up a little if necessary. So,
Now, I wasn't implying that your end would be boring. I was talking about my end. You do
okay.
a good job, but yeah.
Well, now that that's out there, So, Alex, do you want to, for those of you that, or for those that don't know who you are, do you want to kind of give a little introduction of who you are?
Yeah, my name is Alex Peterson. I'm a third generation dairy farmer from northern Missouri, and I'm currently the chairman of the United Dairy Industry Association and the U.S. Dairy Export Council.
Good. And you're obviously from a farm, especially with positions like that. So, do you want to talk a little bit about your dairy farm?
Yeah, we're a unique little farm. We are, I said I was third generation. I farm with my parents, my oldest brother, and my niece. And we milk about 150 pro cross cows, so Holstein Montbéliard, Swedish Red,
Oh, fun.
on a management intensive grazing dairy in the Green Hills of North Missouri. So most of the time works really, really well. Currently, it is 0 degrees with a negative 15 wind chill. So I tell my farmer friends that because everybody asks, you're in North Missouri, what do you do in the wintertime? You can't graze in January. And that is true most of the years. Although New Year's Day, we were still nibbling around a little bit here and there. But we do obviously feed hay through the winter and baleage. And we used to be confinement up until it used to be a conventional dairy up until 1993. So we still have some of the old facilities. So I've still got an old freestall and I've got a loafing shed. So I tell my farmer friends when the weather's bad, the 25 days a year that it's bad, I just have to act like a real dairy farmer. But the rest of the time, it's take a mid-afternoon nap and just moving fencing around. But it has been real work the last few weeks, which makes me really appreciate what farmers around the country, most of them do day in, day out. So,
Yeah. Well, so one could say your job is all green meadows, sunshine, and pastures.
ideally, yeah, with a little, with a tenth of rain every afternoon. Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Perfect. It's like, what is it, Hawaii? They get like a little bit of a rain shower every day, and that's it. No like monsoons or anything like that. Just keep it. It's
Yeah,
like the good old. It's like the good old days.
if
Seems
Hawaii
like
real
rain's
estate
gonna be
wasn't so
there.
outrageous, maybe we pack it up and go out there.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, moving. You heard it first. Alex Peterson wants to move his dairy to Hawaii. Apparently. Oh,
well, maybe.
I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible gig if you could afford it. So that would
Yeah,
be good.
I'm sure
So
there's a reason why there's so few on the island. There is still, I
I
want to
think
say, a
there's one.
couple in white. Yeah, one or two in white. So
Yeah. Yep.
doable.
Um, Actually, I got to meet the herdsman of the one dairy farm left in Hawaii at World Dairy Expo. Actually, he stopped by the Dairy Management Inc. booth and I was chatting with him. I did not have any luck getting him on the podcast. So if anyone has any connections with the dairy farmer from Hawaii, this is your sign to send them my way. But yeah, so he was saying that he manages it for a guy that owns it, and it was pretty interesting to chat with him. So maybe you can go work there, Alex.
Yeah, it's always good to have a backup plan.
Seriously. So obviously, being third generation, you did grow up on the dairy. So, what kind of fun things did you do as a kid on the dairy?
So I was the youngest of three boys. So I had no life whatsoever. So they were 3 years older and 5 years older. So about the time I was getting to high school, they were taken off, and so I kind of got thrust into the kind of the main labor pool of the dairy pretty early on, which was good. But we had a really good upbringing, really good life. Those of you that have grown up on dairy farms, you know that it's both rewarding and uniquely challenging in some aspects. But at the time, it was just my folks running the farm. They bought out my uncle and aunt when I was 6 or 7, and
Okay.
so they went through that era where the era of like the late 80s, early 90s, where things uh, were a lot of work, and it was just
Yes.
them, and so even as a 14-year-old, you kind of had pity on your on your parents, and were eager to help. One of the and I know we'll get to inspirational stuff later, but here's a little one to throw in early. I think it was, I don't know how old I was. I must have been 11 or 12, but whenever it was the absolute optimal time that my mother told me, and this is in the midst of me, like, these chores are ruining my life. I just want to,
Mm-hmm.
play computer games or go see my friends or play basketball, whatever.
Yep.
And she said, unless you want to milk cows the rest of your life, you better do really good in school and get scholarships and get out of here. And they must have told that to all three of us boys, because we all did very, very well in school. Granted, it was a little tiny school. I graduated with 18 kids,
Oh my gosh.
uh, and one of these little districts where, like, knew everybody in my class. I knew what their parents did. I knew most of their grandparents. Kind of place where it's a black hole. You get in here and you can't get out. But anyway, so the three of us all went to school, and two of us came back. So she was like, tried to tell you guys to get out of here, and we just didn't do it. But so really enjoy like the family aspect of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big draw to the family farm business is uh, it's not something that you have to do. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that you get to do with people you love every day. And love can be kind of a loaded word, of course, but that goes with the territory. But also
Yeah.
means when things are going on, like, you absolutely understand and cover for
Mm-hmm.
people, and you can get away. And I think that's part of how I've been able to serve in the dairy industry in the capacities that I have, is because the rest of the crew here understands the value of that, understands how important it is,
Mm-hmm.
and even though they aren't above like 100% guilting me before and after to make sure that they're getting the most out of me, and like, yeah, and I have,
So I
we've
have
been
to pause you there, Alex, because it is so funny. What you describe is exactly my situation here, as far as working with my parents and actually my husband as well. And my mom and my husband and my dad, they're the first ones to be like, oh, that opportunity, like, take it, go for it, like, go set your soul on fire, like, go show the world all about dairy. But then they're the first ones to be like, well, I have to do this because you're not going to be there and blah blah blah. And I'm like, hey, you knew 100% when you were like, oh, go do this, like, you knew what you were getting into. But they enjoy guilting. I get
but
that.
you were going to get that done before you left, right, Val? That kind of line. You were going to finish all this before you go, or you're not going to leave us in a mess like this, are you?
You would be amazed the things that I need to get done before I leave. And it never fails. Like, I'm the main herdsman on the farm, and those cows, they know, they're like, oh, you're going away? Hang on a second. Let's see what kind of trouble we can get into that you have to take care of before you leave. Yes. So yeah, I've I've always made it, but some days it's a struggle just because they all know everything wants to break. So I get that.
Yeah, and that's something I've been knowing I need to focus on more lately. Um, it's kind of easy. It's easy to impress people
Mm-hmm.
the further you get from home. You go on a trade mission trip to Chile, and you're a dairy farmer from the States. They like they just have so much respect for what we do, how we do it, the scale we do it at. But your family it's like the opposite. Like so, it takes a lot to kind of bring them around to what's going on. But yeah, so they do absolutely support, but you have to. I've been meaning to figure out the right approach on the leadership side of the farmstead. And not
Mm-hmm.
that we have like a leadership problem. Of course, Jocko Willink would say everybody has a leadership problem. Um, but no, like getting to the point where it's a little smoother transition from when I've got to go on a trip to when I get back. But some of that's just management style. And we're kind of in this transition phase. So my niece just joined the farm in July full time.
Okay,
And
that's
so,
awesome to see another generation coming back.
yeah, and she is right now like 4 days past due of her first child.
Oh my
So
God.
we're on like, yeah, so everything's kind of a blur at the moment. But as people kind of settle into roles and figure out things, so there's been a shuffling of who's responsible for what, and I think that's an exciting time in any business, in any farm, in any organization. You always get excited when like the next new generation of talent, or you hire somebody that's got this new skill set.
Yeah.
And but like that excitement, you have to figure out, okay, how are we going to implement this to make sure it actually works, and not totally upend what we're already doing. And but anyway, it's all exciting, just terrific problems to have at the moment. But
Definitely.
yeah, but back to the point. Yeah, it's a lot of work the few days before you leave to go do something, and when you get back, you ask any farmer that goes on a vacation somewhere, like takes family on a vacation, like the 4 or 5 days beforehand and the 4 or 5 days after you get back are just miserable, and then you struggle to enjoy the vacation while you're gone because whatever. But so
Yep.
it's like that, only twice a month in my case, as I go here and there. So
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an adjustment, and trying to figure out that balance is it's a struggle, but and obviously being in the situation that I'm in the situation that you're in, having that supportive family back at the farm, taking care of things, like as much as they might give us a hard time, just knowing how, they understand the importance of getting out there and doing the work that's being done, on local and regional and national levels, or in your case, worldwide levels. Like that's just so important. And it's almost like a new generation of dairy farmers coming in that are starting to really grasp that excitement and just that need to be, it's being more than a dairy farmer. And at this point in the game in 2024, you can't just be a dairy farmer these days. Like you have to be more, you have to be able to, be a part of these other organizations. There's way less of us. So to keep these organizations strong, like you have to show up and do stuff. Otherwise, these organizations fall by the wayside. And then you're wondering, where are the benefits from these organizations? Oh, wait, no one will show up. So these organizations don't run. And just everything is just on such a bigger scale now. Everything is so connected by technology and just all of these crazy new systems and concepts. I was actually messing around with Chat GPT the other day for the first time, and I was just, it blows your mind. Have you messed with that at all?
oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, it just blow. And of course, I'm not old. I mean, some days my body feels old, but I'm only 35, and it was just funny because I'm sitting at my iPad and I'm like messing with it, and I'm like all excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this. That is so cool. And I'm like, man, I kind of feel like a 75 to 95-year-old person like sitting here over this technology. And it's just crazy to think that like my children are going to grow up and not remember a time before all of this stuff. So, but the world is just changing so fast, and it's so important for us as dairy farmers, or just us in agriculture in general, for us to stay at the cusp of all of these changing technologies and ideas and information systems. So,
I think you bring up a really interesting observation that I've made just the last 2 or 3 years. So I was pretty young when I first came to the DMI board and got appointed to the National Dairy Board, and just finished that those 6 years. But from when the time I started till now, there's been a huge turnover in leadership, and I think it's that way across the U.S. dairy scape and probably agriculture in general. And we're getting this generation of farmers that were of the generation whose parents got the advice from maybe just wisdom, but also some of these you know estate planning workshops. They're like, hey, try to encourage your kids to go develop a skill and come back to the farm, or start a professional career and then come, instead of just coming back right out of school. And some people were able to develop skill sets, regardless, or early, whatever. But the people coming on these boards and that are coming in agriculture leadership, kind of to your point, so many of them have kind of incredible skill sets or talents, or side businesses, and not, I mean, obviously a ton of credit to previous generations for what they had done in farming and dairy industry. But God bless them, they just didn't, there was no time. Like, you didn't have time to do anything other than the 100 hours of work that had to be done every week, for the farm's sake. And as mechanization and system streamline and automation, where dairy farming is still, you talk to civilians and they say, oh, dairy farming, that is such hard work. And I'm like, listen, when my grandpa did it, it was just insane amounts of work. My parents, it was very hard. I said, the hard part now is somebody's got to be there, twice a day, 3 times a day, all day, every day. And that's a hard thing. That's a hard sell. There's a reason why, people don't sign up for jobs that are 7 days a week. It's, we're going closer. Mainstream is going closer to 4 days a week jobs, and not, less days instead of more days. But our generation kind of, whether we went to school or learned a trade or started a business, and are kind of coming back to the farm side with like just tremendous skills, talents, and abilities. And to see that in a boardroom, farmer leaders that weren't just farmers, which, I mean, all these farmers have always been CEOs, like, but to have like these other cool skill sets, like you and your communication skills, and what you've brought to bear with like this podcast, that wasn't like, hugely like, oh, some business said, oh, Val, we're going to set you up, we're going to start this podcast and blah, blah, blah. But this is a great example of a skill set that's been brought to bear for the good of the industry. And it comes to light in so many different ways. Like, a buddy of mine just, became a Nuffield scholar, and it's just a great kind of ambassador for dairy and agriculture. And these things are, I think, really good news for going forward. And I think it gives me a lot of hope and joy, and also makes me wonder what skill and ability should I have been developing over the years. But no, yeah. But kudos to you and the young farmers like you that kind of have come back to the farm with not just a replica of skill sets that their parents taught them to have. And I think that's a really big thing.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of that generational shift, I did have one of those families, and actually I was told I had to go work for somebody else before I could come back to the farm, because I needed to learn how to have a boss that was not my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I did spend some years off the farm, and that was great to gain that experience. And I definitely learned that I prefer to be my own boss, which is fine. But I did go out and I experienced it, and I did gain skill sets that I wouldn't have gained just staying here on our 150 cow dairy in upstate New York. So that was really nice. And I do think it's definitely like that generational shift, but like the generations before us, not only did they have, what seems like more manual labor just because of the increases in technology, but they also, if you think about their parents, like you lived, ate, and breathed the farm. Like, oh, let other people do that. That's for them to do. Like, you stay on the farm. So I think that, we did get lucky that we're coming after the generation of people that, you have to live at the farm all day, every day. Like, you can't have a life, you can't do all this stuff. And I guess we're very thankful to be in that generation, because I think that I would also go stir crazy being stuck just in one spot all the time. So,
Well, and to think, I've had this thought. I don't think I've shared it anywhere, but like when I think of like my grandfather who started this dairy, and like I guess I'm young enough that like I've always had the internet, from high school on. Really, I've had internet, and to think of how many times a day I use the internet, whether I'm shopping for supplies, watching a YouTube video on how to fix the skid steer, like, oh, how the hell do I get to, this part, or, and things that you could figure out. It just would take a lot more time. And well, you can watch somebody that has a video. Here's the hack. Here's how you do it.
yep.
Like if you give me 9 pieces of information, I can figure out the 10th. Okay. Like my grandfather, he would have one, like his observation he would have. And then from that, he would have to figure out everything else. And I used this alliteration at when I was at COP in Dubai last month. And like my grandfather knew what was going on all the farms that were patrons of the local feed mill. Like those 20 farms that he interacted with, he kind of knew what was going on there. And that was the extent of the research that they had for the industry. I mean, there was a few other spigots coming in, but extension and stuff, but not huge. And then like my parents' generation, it was like kind of the Midwest, Missouri. They had a pretty good feel of what was going on around here. But now, like you and I, and the
Yeah.
people listening to this podcast, we have the entire world is at our fingertips as far as information, as far as what farming practices are being tried, working, not working, what might work on our farm, what might not work on our farm. So we went from a research setting of, some academia and the neighborhood to a little more academia and the region to every single farm in this, almost every farm in the world is a type of
Yeah.
research farm that you can garner information, intel, insights from. And I think that's also incredibly encouraging as we
Yeah.
look to what goes ahead, because there's always the beauty of US dairy in that it's 28,000 kind of independent CEO operating firms doing business. Is there's always a farm somewhere that's just signed on the dotted line on some new infrastructure, on some new pilot, on some brand new tech that's probably never been tried before. And that's going on every single day. And it's not 4 or 5 big companies saying, okay, here's the cookie cutter. Do not deviate from the cookie cutter, which, and not to knock that works for some industries, to some people's chagrin or not. And I will get into that debate. But I think what's made us so strong is our independence, but
Yeah.
also dependence on learning from each other, which I don't know the extent that happened in the past, but nowadays, even though Val and I, maybe technically are competing against each other, we're both making milk. But I mean, I've got Val's back. I know she's got mine. We want to help each other do as best as possible. And I think that kind of ties back to kind of what I see as my leadership on these boards, whether it's UDIA, DMI, or U.S. Dairy Export Council. It's how do we make sure that we're all pulling together? Because the best thing for a farmer anywhere is for farmers everywhere to be doing well and to have a good rapport with their communities and to have a good rapport with consumers. And I think that all kind of fits hand in glove.
I
You really lead
definitely.
a really you lead a really good conversation, Val. Good job.
Oh, thanks. I try, you know. Um, but so one of the things that really it really burns me when people want to pit farm sizes against one another and like do play the large farm, small farm game. And I'm like, A, farm sizes, they work better and worse in different regions. And B, they work better or worse for different families, different setups. Everything is so diverse these days. Like what works for, and you were saying like the cookie cutter thing, like you can't just have all, you know, the same sized farms everywheres with the same technology, the same this, the same that. Like that diversity within dairy is so important. And again, like what works for somebody might not work for somebody else, and that's okay. And I think as an industry, it's so important that we work together to basically keep the industry something that does work for that diversity of farms. Like we are never going to be here a, you know, couple thousand cow dairy. We don't have the land base, we don't have the infrastructure to do that. For those that can do that, go for it. Like that's wonderful. I'm happy, you know, but in upstate New York, we are surrounded by hills where I am. We have a river on the other side. Like we're just not meant to be a huge dairy farm. But we've also found ways to diversify to make ourselves unique in our own little corner of New York State. And that's also great. Like that's one of those things like the cookie cutter thing and just yeah. Anyways, the situation of people pitting small farms and big farms against each other, it drives me crazy. So, with that being said,
Well, and you know, when I came to the national like board level, like I thought I would see some of that. And I really, when it comes to like leadership, the people in leadership positions, I mean, you hardly see any, if any, of that at that level. And in the countryside, you know, there might be still some of that, but
yeah,
I think as people have kind of had their aperture like expanded to what's going on around them, like outside of their region, they see how, like to your point, how much different it is to farm in New York as Missouri as West Texas. Like kind of like, same point you are. Like we're in the green hills of Missouri. Like there is some crop ground
yeah,
around, and there's some ground that should be pasture that is cropped, especially when corn gets to, you know, $7 every 4 or 5 years. But everybody's dealt a hand, and that's kind of, I mean, and you know, as generational as it sounds, but you know, what kind of farm you are coming into, whether you're, you know, buying in, you know, whether you're marrying it, burying it, or just starting from scratch, uh, what, like to your point, what management skill do you want to have? Some people like are really good at managing employees, you know, building those systems that will work. Some people want to be the ones that milk the cows, which is, and that's totally fine. I'm all for people doing what they love to do, but the land, who you are, what you want to do, what goals you have, all those play a part. My
agreed.
cows, I so I said I was a grazing dairy. My milk production is, I mean, probably the lowest of the people on the DMI board. I'm gonna guess, but my costs are lower than anybody on the DMI. So I mean, so I think when people start actually comparing and have good, you know, conversations with the dairy farmers, you very quickly see, oh, you're in a different situation than I'm in. Not that I still can't learn from you, but I think
Definitely.
the uniqueness is tremendous. And I will say, whenever I'm on like trade mission trips, sometimes you'll hear, oh, the U.S. nothing but all these big farms, you know, big corporate farms, and they say it with a sneer, like, listen, if I'm a cow, some of those nice operations, that's like being at the Four Seasons. That's not a bad place to be. I said, my
Yep.
girls are more like Girl Scouts. They're out there and they got to find your own for the most part. try to take care of yourself and do the best you can. And they have a good time too. Uh, but when you are able to demonstrate them, actually, the U.S. dairy industry is
Yes.
incredibly diverse, and not just in style, but as you were saying, as in region. And that's actually a really good selling point for U.S. dairy in the export market, is that even when even when there's a major blizzard like Goliath in the Southwest, even when there's a hurricane in the Southeast, even when California is on fire or a lake, depending on what year it is, or you name it. If we have a region or two that's having like a really oppressive situation production wise, the rest of the like we are diverse enough that we tend to balance out. We stay at that 1% production increase a year.
Yep.
And that's not the case. I mean, look at New Zealand's production over the last 10 years. It bounces
Yeah.
around because if they have an issue, they all it's pretty much the whole group. So it's a real plus how diverse we are in style and diverse we are in location. And I think that's a big play that I thought I would tuck in, but that
Yeah.
fits well with what I work at.
Yeah, I do. And I love the diversity of it. And I love your analogy of, that your cows are Girl Scouts, because now I'm never going to look at you and not think
Yeah.
like, oh, Alex has Girl Scout cows. Okay. Yeah. And it's funny because, people that don't have that experience, like, there's people that obviously are far removed from the farm, and that's okay. But, for them to like understand that, like, no matter what the size, no matter what your operation is, the one common goal is that we as farmers do the best we possibly can to take care of our cows. And that's just like being a parent. There's so many different parenting styles, but the number one goal of being a parent is you take the best care of your children. Like, that's so important. And I don't think that people realize that, like, farms, you can have 20 cows to 20,000 cows, but the common goal in those farmers is to take the best care possible of their cows. So it's just a fun analogy, but I love the Girl Scout cow thing. That's pretty awesome. So there's
I don't
reasons
give
you're
them.
brilliant,
I
Alex,
don't
right?
give them any badges. I don't get any badges,
Oh,
but maybe I have to work on that.
I was gonna say we're gonna get them collars, and you just put a different like number on them for each level that they unlock in their game of Girl Scouts. I don't know. Oh my gosh. So I want to shift gears. You do a lot with U.S. dairy exports. And I know that you've been on some really fun adventures. And I just wanted to kind of touch on those a little bit because, they're once in a lifetime adventures, and there's a lot of people that are never going to get to have those adventures. So I didn't know if you wanted to share some of your experiences with that.
Yeah. So since I kind of got involved with the U.S. Dairy Export Council, uh, we've actually kind of made a shift in what we do and how we do it. So, and we will still do some, but it started off on trade mission trips, which is really kind of a delegation of farmers and some staff, and go and just kind of witness firsthand what's going on in the market. And so my first trade mission trip was to Dubai a few years ago. And you think, Dubai is kind of like think of a brand new Las Vegas, but in a desert in the Middle East as opposed to in Nevada. But just a crazy intersection of business and populations and cultures, because I heard it said that over 80% of the Fortune 500 companies in the world have a regional headquarters in Dubai, because it's where you do business in that part of the world in a relatively, kind of safe location, but that's very, very business friendly. And so you go and you see what we're doing on the ground. And so you go to a couple like grocery store, supermarkets, and you see what the consumer sees. That's what you want to see. And some of it you have played up, and they'll have a promotion or something, but you actually get to see where they would find U.S. dairy products, what they look like, what kind of labels do they have, what differentiates them, how much prominence they have. And that, like, we all understand some degree, like grocery store dynamics, where you're fighting for, as much space as you can. You want it
Mm-hmm.
as close to eye level as you can. Like all the same premises play, no matter where you are. Like, you absolutely have to get in front of the consumer, and you have to catch their attention, and hopefully catch it enough that they grab you and put you in their cart. And so there's the retail side of it, and then there's all the other things that you would think. We actually work with influencers locally. So whoever those people are, will try to figure out ways to set up either like meet and greets or some sort of like demonstration, or like not like demonstration, but like culinary demonstration or something to that effect. And those are always interesting because um, all of our algorithms are probably kind of tainted where we have a little more ag stuff. But I think in general public, agriculture and animal stuff, like baby calves, just like go crazy viral on an unadulterated algorithm, not like ours, but some random person in an urban setting, like, oh, that's cute, that's interesting. So dairy is kind of really good content for those people. So it's not hard to sell them on interacting with us. We also have programs with like chefs and culinary schools, where people who are training chefs, we will go in and help them build a USA cheese specialist program, where unlike my Girl Scout cows, these chefs, when they complete this, they actually do get a badge and get
Perfect.
a pin for their chef garb, and to show that they're a USA cheese specialist. And that it's really kind of like simple but kind of brilliant, because these you want to influence the influencers. And so these chefs, when they go back to their, whether it's a hotel kitchen or a restaurant or a food service, you know, type of situation, if they have a knowledge and trust of USA cheese, then they are a lot more willing to put that in their product mix. And we know
Yeah.
that when they start putting in their product mix, that people are going to appreciate it, give them feedback. And that's kind of thing that gets product moving that way. But also, if Val at the Michelin star restaurant started using, pepper jack from the States, or some cool artisan cheese from the States, then everybody that like is down the ripple effect from there
Hmm.
is gonna take note and do the same thing, to whatever extent. And so those are all part of it. We also usually always meet with the U.S. government representatives. So some people might not be aware that USDA, they have it's called the FAS, the Foreign Ag Service, and there's a couple of wings, actually tentacles outside of that too. But they're people that represent U.S. agriculture and the embassies and trade missions across the globe. And we meet with them for a couple of reasons. Number one, so that they know we're there and blah blah blah. But also, they're also always out there advocating for U.S. products, including dairy products.
Mhm.
And if you can really kind of encourage them in what we have, what we're doing, our sustainability story, our nutrition story, then they're able to take that and really multiply it as they leverage not just what we have for products, but that we had a trade mission trip. I mean, that's ammo that they can use to continue to do their job well. So these are all kind of things that we do on like a traditional trade mission trip. Sometimes we'll also get to meet local dairy farmers, which is always a crowd
Yeah.
favorite. Uh, but there's, and kind of the point we made earlier, well, aren't you competing with local dairy farmers? In some senses, yes. In other senses, what we are trying to do is grow demand. I mean, you can pirate some sales from other exporters or whatever, but at the end of the day, you want to grow demand for dairy products. And we're always going to ship very, very little fluid milk in the
Yeah.
export market. And so most of the places we export to in big ways aren't real big dairy producing areas. But if you're growing demand, then you're probably going to grow demand for fluid some. and even then, there are some fresh products that are just, there's always going to be a competitive advantage for the people that are producing it domestically
Yeah.
to provide for that market. So, and kind of to our point, the best thing for farmers anywhere is for farmers everywhere to do well. And so if you can get a local production system that's got a good rapport, has a good consumer facing side, is really building trust in dairy products generally. I mean, we all kind of remember the melamine situation in China that really negatively affected their domestic consumption. That negatively affected us as well. So you need the local production to be, a positive story.
Yeah.
And I think that, and they're always looking to learn from us and on how to grow demand. And so that's a good thing too. And so that's kind of a traditional trade mission, but we also do kind of like some specialty trips. Like, so I went to COP last fall, which is the UN Climate Summit, and that's a very interesting part of what we do at the U.S. Dairy Export Council is giving sustainability credit to the people who are doing good and that are a good story. And agriculture has not always been at the forefront of those discussions, and usually had traditionally been excluded. And you've all probably heard the idiom that, if you're not at the table, you'll be on the table. And so it has been really important for us to get at the table. And then once we've been at the table, it's amazing how quickly people's attention is gathered to, oh, you know what? Agriculture is a tremendous opportunity for us to have positive sustainability wins. Oh, and there's farms that are already doing incredibly innovative things that are actually making a difference. And to a sector that talks about solutions a lot and is looking to solutions to demonstrate that farmers, and in our case, dairy farmers, we only get paid when we find solutions. That's kind of a different mentality. We don't get paid to look for solutions. We can only get paid when we find them. And I think that sells very well to the people that really have an open mind to what's going on, that, oh, wait, you know what? There probably is some good investment in agriculture and making positive differences. So we've kind of pivoted from like trying not to be like totally handicapped at what we're trying to do to look, we have motive to do well. Like, we're generational farms. We want to pass this down for generation to generation. We want to take care of what we have. So we have motive. We have opportunity. We all have a list of things that we would love to see done on our farm to make it more sustainable, better water quality, better soil quality, better soil health. And then you get into the methane side of things. Mm-hmm. So we all have a laundry list of things that are tremendous opportunities, but what we don't always have is means. We don't have the means to do all of these things.
We need those deeper wallets, that's for sure. We could do a lot of things if we had deeper wallets.
Yeah, and so finding opportunities to use other people's monies to invest in us, and obviously you're always leery of strings being attached and those types of things, but there are plenty of people out there that want to do good for the sake of doing good. And those people, when they find people that are doing good for the sake of doing good, tend to get along very well. And so that's things like that have been pretty good stories so far.
Well, we're definitely happy that you're getting the opportunity to go represent United States Dairy at all of these really cool conferences and trade missions, things like that. So Nate, I don't know if you want to list off, I'm always just fascinated by some of the places that you've been. You want to kind of list some fun stuff or maybe a highlight from those trips?
Yeah. So Singapore and Japan this last year, and Singapore, beautiful city, kind of another trade hub. Japan was absolutely beautiful, a tremendous place. And I really loved the farmers. The dairy farmers in Japan were great to meet. The show, The Iron Chef, is from Japan, and so that Chef Hattori He's
Yep.
actually, his culinary school works with us on the USA Cheese program. So I got to meet him and tour
Oh
his
my gosh,
place.
I'm
And
jealous.
yeah, he's very, very cool. Very cool. And just an incredible establishment, the culinary school that he runs. So that was a great experience. And then we all went to Chile a couple of years ago. Chile is a big U.S. cheese importer and a pretty pretty strong economy in South America, and so they're a good partner. And kind of with the way geopolitical things are kind of crazy at the moment, and I think that's probably an evergreen statement. No matter when you're listening to this podcast, like that's probably gonna play. Um, but Central and South America is, I mean, has always been on our radar, but
Mhm.
especially as things are going the way they are, I think it's more and more important that we give all the attention that we need to Central and South America, because logistically it just makes more sense that they would be stronger long-term trade partners, and as their economies kind of continue to, you know just like ours in fits and starts, grow to some degree and grow a middle class,
Yep.
that's a good opportunity for us going forward. And then Mexico City, which obviously Mexico's our number one dairy trade market, so it's important to have a good rapport with the people that make that happen. And Costa Rica. Anyway, yeah, I've I've hit the passport pretty hard,
Good.
and I wish there was more fun things on those trips. A lot of it is fluorescent. I've seen fluorescent lights and all over the world, which is not always fun at airports. But I kind of have a motto that is, I don't try to ever do anything that I wouldn't do for free. And so I try to only do things that I would do for free. And I, getting to be an ambassador and representative for U.S. Dairy is something that I very honored to be able to do. And I'm so thankful for the people that kind of gave me the encouragement and kind of made it a possibility for me.
Mhm.
But just it is a great honor to be able to do that. And sometimes I tell myself that, on a 14-hour plane ride somewhere, that it's what you're doing is an honor. It's an honor to do it. So
Yes,
I
I
do
can see how
appreciate that.
that would be strenuous at some points where you're just like, oh my gosh, this is forever. I can I can see that. I spoke with a gentleman from New Zealand a couple episodes ago, and he was talking about how when he came to Chicago to the World Dairy Summit, he was talking about his plane ride, and I'm just like, I really would love to visit that. I don't know if I could tolerate that kind of a plane ride, and I think it was like a pretty direct flight too. It was just insane. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. The longest one I've ever been on is like 8 or 9 hours, and that's a lot. So
It's a lot. It's a
yeah.
lot. It's
Uh,
kind of like being cold outside now. At some point, it's just cold. At some point, the flight is just long, and it doesn't. And just try to watch another movie or read some more of your book, or Lord
yep.
willing, just sleep a whole bunch.
Get some rest. You're gonna need it. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I can
Yeah.
agree with that. So I want to get into some fun questions because I like to just ask fun questions and learn more about everybody. So you have been all around the world, as you mentioned. What is the craziest thing that you have ever eaten?
Ooh, craziest thing I've ever eaten. I think so. So to put in context, growing up in North Missouri, I'm as far from an ocean as you can get, pretty much. So, sushi to me was a pretty foreign thing. But, I will, this is one area where I'll give myself credit. I kind of embraced it like a champ. And actually, I really enjoy sushi now, but not from gas stations in North Missouri, only from sometime when I'm, near a body of water. And, but urchin
Okay.
was, that was probably for me. And I'm a guy that kind of, I can go along and get along But that was a lot.
What kind of context did you have urchin in, or where did you have it?
It was in Japan, and the gentleman who was kind of our lead, kind of representative for U.S. Deck,
Mm-hmm.
Hisao, phenomenal marketing guy, government relations guy, which is a big part of what U.S. Tech has to do is on the trade policy side is working with other governments to keep trade lines open and when hiccups arise. By the way, one of his previous careers, he was like the CEO of the food service of Japan, which Japan was like, I mean, they're a big restaurant place. I mean,
Yeah.
lots of restaurants in Japan. So anyway, but so he knows all of the big wigs. So every time we'd go somewhere to a restaurant, like of an evening, it seemed like the owner of the restaurant or the chain of restaurants would show up out of respect for Hisa and his like esteemed guests. And so we were up in Hokkaido, which is the island where a lot of the dairies are.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy has like a chain of these sushi places, but it's the ones, you ever been to a restaurant where there's like a little trolley that goes around and you just like pick
Yep.
up, if you see something you like, you just pick a plate up and eat it. And then apparently, which I'd never been to something like that, but apparently you just, they just count the plates. And that's how
Okay.
they figure your bill. Like different types of plates or different whatever. But I was sitting across from like the owner of these, like in this booth. And so he was just like grabbing plates and shoving them in front of me. So I didn't know half of what I was eating. But like, but when you're a foreign dignitary, you like are trying to be as, you try
Yeah,
to
you
go
want to
with
be
as much as possible.
respectful.
You want to be respectful. So if the owner puts a plate in front of you, you eat it. So I think I ate, I don't know, maybe 5,000 calories that setting or something.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I think urchin was one of them. But it was interesting.
It was interesting. How many stars out of 10 would you eat again?
I mean, uh, for the good of the cause, I'll do about anything ethically acceptable to get it done, including eating urchin, I suppose.
So, in other words, you wouldn't just order it off the menu
No,
yourself. No.
no,
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
no.
Okay. So obviously having been to a ton of places around the world, what is one place that you cannot wait to get to that you have never been?
Hmm.
Whether it be for US dairy or just a vacation on your own.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have yet to be to kind of mainland Europe at all,
Okay.
and so that's probably, I don't know if that'll be a U.S. deck trip or not. There's a chance, maybe Rome, as far as the UN FAO. There's
Mm-hmm.
some business that takes place there, but yeah, I've never been to any part of Italy or any part of Italy, any part of Europe, and I think that would be
Ah,
just kind of like historical
yep.
history wise. I think that would be a really cool thing to see.
See, it's funny. I haven't been around a lot of the world, but I've been to Europe multiple times, so I think it's just funny. But
Yeah.
if there's a trip to Europe, though, sign me up. I'm there. I'm a
Uh,
huge Europe fan. So I have friends there too. So like I can hook us up. We got all sorts of friends all over Europe.
you've got friends everywhere, Val. That won't work.
Ha! I gotta try, right? Oh gosh. All right. Let's find one more question for you. Gotta find you a good one. Um, all right. What is your like go-to? You get one last meal ever. What are you going for? Your death row meal, if you will.
All right. Well, this is gonna highlight that I'm a bachelor, of course, but it's gonna be a grilled cheese sandwich with Munster cheese
Oh, take
with
a little turn there with pepperoni.
pepperoni in it. Yeah. Oh, anytime you're making a grilled cheese, throw some pepperoni in there and yeah, get some meat. And then cottage cheese, Prairie Farms 4% small curd cottage cheese, and
Not to be specific, but
I mean to be specific, that's the according according to our what's our cheese competition?
Oh
That's
yeah.
a cheese. Yeah, at National Milk, that they win just about every year with that. It's really
All
good
right.
cottage cheese.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to
and
check it out this coming year.
and wavy Lays, original Lays potato chips,
Oh,
wavy. That goes with the cottage cheese incredibly, pretty well. Anyway,
oh.
that's I'll take that meal 3 times a week, and death row or not. So
That that took a turn because I had you pegged as like a steak and potatoes kind of guy. So you really threw a curveball there, Alex. Like we're gonna go with that. All right, here's I guess I have to ask one more question just because you brought up the cottage cheese. Have you ever had cottage cheese and pineapple?
I don't think so.
It's
I don't think so.
delicious.
You just put the pineapple in the cottage cheese or
Put the
on the
pineapple
side?
on the in the bottom of the bowl, load the cottage cheese on top, and eat it all together. It is delicious.
Huh. Seems like
And
a New
that
York
like
thing.
well, and then someone else that I met, they put like salt and pepper on cottage cheese and eat it. And I was like, well, that's
Oh,
interesting.
I put pepper. I don't put salt,
Oh,
pepper on it.
okay. See, and that's something like I didn't grow up with that. I grew up when you have cottage cheese, you put it on pineapple and it's amazing. So there's your thing to try for the day.
All right.
But I also thought that my friend was crazy when he's like, yeah, you put pepper on it. I was like, ew, why would you do that? I still have not tried it because I'm not a huge pepper fan, but you know,
No.
one of these days I'll broaden my horizons on that one. So, what is your inspirational advice or motto or what do you live by?
Um, yeah, so kind of back to my, I don't do anything that I wouldn't do for free. Now that being said, sometimes you get roped into more and then it turns into a job. But um, also, I'm a guy of faith, and I heard it put once, and I just love it so much, and that's God isn't as much the first thing on my list. It's the paper that my list is written on. I think that says a lot, and it ties back to everything we do. Not just what we do, but how we do it matters a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that the farming community, agriculture, dairy in general, like we tend to be people of integrity, because you can't be too self-absorbed when when you know that a bulk of your life is going to be focused on taking care of the Girl Scouts and people at the buffet line, the cattle, and um, it's kind of forced out of you to look after yourself first. And I think that plays well, and especially as I kind of went around the globe and met with business people from all over the world, relationships matter and integrity matters. And I think, as former U.S. Deck Chair Larry Hancock, who a great mentor of mine, he said, "There's one thing." He goes, "I want to be known as somebody with integrity," and I think that just is an absolutely truism. And people can tell very quickly whether you're a person of integrity or a fake, or whatever.
Yeah.
People tell that very, very quickly. People have a really keen sense of other people, and I think just being genuine, but being genuinely good
Yeah.
goes a long way. If
That
at
little
all
caveat,
possible.
got to be genuinely good, not
Yeah,
genuinely bad.
don't
Yeah.
be a genuine jerk. That doesn't help
Yes.
very much at all. So,
Agreed. I like it.
mhm.
Alex, if people want to follow in on your adventures, are you active on any socials where people can?
Yeah, Alex underscore Peterson on Twitter, uh, and then LinkedIn is always is fun. There's a little more action going on there now with US Deck, and then US Deck's website, and
Very
Google,
cool.
and of course this podcast, probably the best
Excellent.
place.
Oh, perfect. I love it. That
Follow,
means we have to have
subscribe.
like
segmented like updates. Where is Alex now? Like, what is he doing now? Got to keep this interesting, right? And I will
Yeah, I
link
should.
those in the show notes for people so that you don't have to like write them down during the podcast. So you can find and follow Alex on his adventures because he's got lots of them and they are fascinating. And Alex, I just want to say on behalf of the United States dairy industry and just as a fellow dairy farmer, we're so appreciative of the great work that you're doing, keeping U.S. dairy on the forefront of, just the world culture and world trade. And that's really important. Not to mention that the work that you do domestically for United States dairy and dairy farmers in general. So I just want to extend a thank you for that. And we really appreciate it. Any parting words from you, Alex?
It is an absolute honor, Val, and thank you so much for that. And everybody, stock up on cottage cheese. Go buy some extra milk. Winter is still here. You never know when you get snowed in. So
yes,
stock up.
I love it. And the Cabot cheese, so you can do Prairie Farms cottage cheese, Cabot cheese, and we're good to go. I guess I can get along with that. So awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Dairy Hour podcast, and we will see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and leave a review. You can find me on most social media platforms at Dairy Gal Val or online at dairygalval.com. Thank you so much for coming to the Dairy Hour.